First, let's just go right down and introduce and thank our panelists who are being here today. To my immediate left, we have Jennifer Foliano, who is here. Good morning, Jennifer. Good to see you. To your left is Marta Levsky. Hi, Marta. Continuing, we have Janice Talley. I see you down there. Hi, Janice. And also with us from Sustainable Jersey is Nancy Quirk. Good morning, Nancy. Thank you all so much for being here. All right, let's jump right in. Our first speaker, an environmental and transportation planner for the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority. I love saying that in the Keep Middlesex Moving radio spots. Focused on issues of sustainability and resiliency, particular climate change adaptation, mitigation in relation to the transportation system, all various very important information. Please welcome Jennifer Foliano.
Good morning. Can you hear me? I should say almost good afternoon at this point. Yeah. You have heard from the speakers thus far how things are quickly changing, and I was just listening to them and reflecting. I grew up in the 80s with a seatbelt that only went across my lap in the back seat, and today I pull into my garage and I tell my toddler who's in the car seat as she's impatiently waiting, 1 minute, Mommy has to plug the car in. And 4 years ago, to be honest, I knew nothing about electric vehicles. So things are changing very quickly. And I just hope that normalizes it a little bit more for those of you who may not be EV owners. So today I'd like to present to you the findings of the NJTPA's Interagency Collaboration on Alternative Fuel Vehicle Study. The work began in July 2016 and was completed recently in December 2017. And this image gives you the geographic extent of the NJTPA region. We are the Metropolitan Planning Organization for all of North Jersey and parts of Central Jersey. The NJTPA board includes 15 local elected officials from our 13 counties, as well as Jersey City and Newark. It also includes a governor's representative, the commissioner of New Jersey Department of Transportation, the executive director of New Jersey Transit, the chairman of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and a citizens representative. And we have 3 standing committees that make recommendations on action items to be considered by our full board. We also have a regional transportation advisory committee that is composed of planners and engineers from the subregions, and they meet to review regional issues and act as advisors to the board. This project study had 2 components to it. One was to put together alternative fuel vehicle readiness plans for 3 pilot communities, and after that we developed a guidebook. I'll give you just a little bit background on what those each are and then start with the readiness plans. And by background, the NJTPA, I would like to say, is interested in facilitating the use of electric vehicles. And we're seeing a greater number of these on the road because, as you heard before, transportation emits about 50% of the greenhouse gases in the state, more than any other sector. And this is from the movement of people and goods, and we can see this number decrease if there are more EVs on the road. So the pilot communities that we worked with are Montclair in Essex County and Woodbridge in Middlesex County that you'll be hearing from next, as well as Secaucus in Hudson County. And the goal was to increase the use of plug-in electric vehicles and natural gas vehicles in those communities, to assess ownership demand and infrastructure needs there, and to recommend any regulatory or policy changes. For the guidebook, we wanted to make sure that this was available and useful for all municipalities in New Jersey. The goal was to provide guidance for those looking to increase their use of a variety of alternative fuel vehicles. This is in addition to electric vehicles and natural gas. We discussed propane, hydrogen, biodiesel, and E85 in the guidebook. We described the benefits and drawbacks of using each and offer recommendations and identify resources for those who are interested in adopting them. This graphic gives you an idea of what the readiness planning process includes. These are the key elements. In some cases, such as permitting and planning, there may be things that the community can take a look at what's already on the books and where barriers might exist and make changes. In other areas like incentives, that can play an important part in the implementation process of the plan. Here's an idea of what the readiness plans look like once they were complete. The outline shows you what it starts with is the goals identified by each municipality together with their stakeholders. It goes into the current market conditions, market outlook, key barriers, and notable regulations including incentives and funding that are either available now or where to go for information for future resources. And each plan includes recommendations with suggested actions and explains where to go for that. And the appendices provide the methodologies that were used by the project team on how we assess things like demand for electric vehicles within those pilot communities that we worked with. I'll walk you through some recommendations for action. These are just highlights. There are many more in each individual plan. One would be to update zoning ordinances and redevelopment plans within the master plan or transportation plan of that community. Very important one that has been touched on before is providing municipal staff, stakeholders, and the public with just basic information. So where to start? What are the rules of thumb? People are curious about basic questions such as how much does it cost to charge a vehicle? Another recommendation is to look at multi-unit dwellings. They can present significant challenges for charging, but they're also an opportunity, especially when a community knows that there's going to be future multi-unit dwelling development coming online. It's also recommended that targeted outreach is specific to employers for workplace charging, multi-unit dwelling managers and developers for that multifamily charging, and specific to businesses and landowners for public charging. And the outreach can set the stage for strategic partnerships to pursue those grants and funding as they come online. Also, municipalities that have not already assessed their own fleet can do that. They can understand the potential opportunities to incorporate EVs and offer plug-in electric vehicle charging for their own employees. So a recommendation would be to take a step back, assess the fleet, and therefore lead by example. When the public sees municipalities own cars, they recognize them as electric vehicles, it starts to normalize it. The second part of this effort, as I mentioned, was the guidebook. It's a tool for all municipalities in the region and in New Jersey to use, giving an idea of where to start and how to pursue a readiness plan of their own. It can be for municipal policymakers, including councils, planning and zoning staff and boards, parking authorities, municipal utilities, environmental commissions, and business improvement districts. In fact, members of business improvement districts were some of the stakeholders that worked with us on these plans. And the guidebook is general, but it also offers specific recommendations that individual municipalities can use they can put into practice based on their own priorities and needs. And although it's a complete tool, it also provides direction on how to identify the easier tasks, the low-hanging fruit, and to get to the most pressing issues first, depending on what your needs and goals are. And beyond municipalities, it's also a tool that can be used by counties and regional governments, fleets, local fueling station operators, and other private stakeholders. These are a handful of recommendations that came out of the guidebook, and many of these came out of our working with the pilot municipalities. Just to name a few, a municipality or other agency could amend the parking codes to include restrictions, enforcement policies, and fees for municipally controlled EV charging stations. They can produce guidance documents clearly outlining permitting requirements and steps. And lastly, I'd note that it's important to identify a diverse set of stakeholders and form a committee. And with many types of planning, it's important to engage early and often with your stakeholders throughout the planning process. So I'll leave it at that, but the guidebook, the final report, and the pilot municipality plans can be found on the NJTPA website if you go to njtpa.org/AFV. At this time, they're also listed on our website homepage. You can easily connect through there. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them afterwards or speak with you after the conference. Thank you very much.
Our next presenter, a licensed professional planner in the state in the practice of land use planning, economic development, and redevelopment, and also the director of planning and development for Woodbridge Township. Something big is happening in Main Street by the overpass there, I hear about, to kind of keep things moving a little smoother there. Excellent. All right, let's welcome our next speaker and presenter, Marta Levski.
Good morning. I should say almost afternoon, it's 5:12. I wanted to start today by kind of giving you an update of where we are with EVs, electric vehicles. I don't have a presentation because other than to show you couple slides of the actual locations, which I don't think you need to see, I'm just the information lady, so I'll just give you the update. So I think when we were first approached by NJTPA, one of the reasons that they approached Woodbridge is because we're sustainability champs and we continually look to be as environmentally sensitive and as cutting edge as we could possibly be for all types of new industry and new development. So we had, before NJTPA approached us, we already had several vehicle installations, and we were kind of just assuming it into our regulation and daily operation, and we can get into that a little bit more during question and answer. If you're interested, I'll just give you kind of an overview here, which is we had already permitted several installations under our existing ordinance as what you could technically call an accessory use, but for existing locations, it's not even that it's its own accessory use. It's just that it was an accessory to an existing location. So that's how several of our upfront locations had come into town. It wasn't through anything related to an approval. And as of today, at approximately 8 different locations, we have 20 charging stations, most of which are both public and private. Wawa has a relationship with Tesla, so as I caught the tail end of the previous panel, Tesla is a very specific charger, so they're not essentially public other than if you have a Tesla, but out of their relationship, they have located several charging stations in our locality on Route 9 also. So I would say to you that most of what we will do in terms of ordinance changes is really going to be as much for publicity and education as opposed to a real desire to have anyone come in for an additional approval to locate a charging station where they already have a use anyway, which we really see as a convenience to customers, users, residents. And so We just took that assertion and interpretation in the zoning ordinance early, and we pretty much have stayed with that. So within that regard, the only time that we would ever look to have an electric vehicle charger need to come in for any kind of approval short of the typical zoning permit, building permit that they need to install the electricity is if it were an existing site that had previously had some kind of parking variance, then we might look at an assessment whereby they might need to come in to obtain a variance to install that infrastructure. But even then, that's what I'm saying to you, we've pretty much, we're really looking at ways that we would just be able to permit it without it requiring any kind of extraordinary approval on the owner, applicant, user from that standpoint. And we're now expanding the locations that I mentioned earlier have been retail, existing retail, gas station, office locations. And now we're looking at how best to incorporate that into any of our multifamily approvals that will be coming up or existing. And, you know, we had a conversation not that long ago about how, as again at the tail end of the previous panel, the speakers indicated that moving forward and already you can basically just plug the car into a regular electrical outlet. And I could say to you that we're, as a town, we're really looking for and forward to the days when that is the standard and there's no longer a necessity to install any kind of expensive infrastructure, because if that were the case, then nobody could ever say that a separate board approval, site plan, et cetera, were necessary to obtain to be worked into and accommodated in either an existing development or a proposed development. You know, some of the other things that we're very, very close to launching, which again, in addition to any of the ordinance changes we do make, and as I said, really up until this point, we haven't made any changes to accommodate the location of EV charging infrastructure. There was only one that came up where there was a possibility because they needed, they had obtained upon their initial construction a parking variance where it really even came into the conversation that they might need an additional approval. We've really accommodated everything we have already just by interpretation. And so moving forward, as I said, if we do make any changes, it's going to be done not just for publicity, but also for outreach and education in the community. We are about to launch a car share service, which will be EV car share service, and a bike share service. And so what I foresee we're getting ready in that launch to do, and I believe we just started with Earth Day, is going to be an all-round kind of publicity, education, information that we will take not only to public access TV, which that's underway also, but then we'll be doing distribution of information in our construction office, and there'll be we already have it on our website, information about it on the website, but there'll be a whole launch of links to whatever we do for public access television, and then also additional information on the website, and we'll really focus on those changes being made to promote the future. And as I said, we very much look forward to the day when everybody can just plug into the wall outlet, and it's no longer, it takes a really, really long time to charge. It's its own fast charge, and then this conversation has kind of resolved itself. Okay, thanks very much.
Our next speaker serves as the Energy Program Manager with Sustainable Jersey and the great important work that they do. They're a nonprofit organization. They provide tools and training, importantly financial incentives as well. This is for communities and schools throughout our state who are interested in developing sustainability programs, which is why it's so important. So if you're a municipality, a township, a city, you'd like to learn more about this, about the incentives, probably a pretty good person to know, right? Please say hello to Nancy Quirk.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here to speak on behalf of Sustainable Jersey. How many folks in the room are actually members in your town of Sustainable Jersey or know about us? Wow. So a couple of my slides might already be things you know, but I like to make sure that folks know who we are and how we work, and then how it actually relates to everything else that we're talking about. I'll talk about some of the work and guidance that we give to municipalities, and I think Janice will probably reflect a lot of that back. So Sustainable Jersey is a nonprofit. We're a voluntary certification organization that provides information for municipalities and schools to do all kinds of actions towards sustainability. So it might be school gardens, it might be biking paths, it might be, any number of things, or waste recycling, whatever it is. In our case, I'm talking about energy things and specifically the electric vehicle actions. But basically, we provide hands-on tools, sort of step-by-step guidance for municipalities and green teams who are basically the feet on the ground. So those are local volunteers and municipal staff who read through our guidance and actually go step-by-step to make things happen. We do have a number of grants. We just closed out a couple of cycles, so I'm not quite sure we have grants open at this time, but we do have grants that pop up pretty much every year to support a variety of activities in the sustainability realm. Here's a map of our participating schools and municipalities. You can see we cover about 80% of the state in terms of those municipalities who are registered in the program. About half of those have done enough work to get certified at either silver or bronze, and many of them, like I think some of those in the room, are seeking gold, our latest certification status, which will be a step above all the rest. And again, the schools have really grown. The municipal program started first and was so popular that the schools said, we want to do some too, so we made a program for the schools. The basic idea is to do work and earn points, and the points will get you to certification at a certain point level. We call these our actions, and our actions are developed by bringing together experts from around the state, many of whom are in the room today and many of whom are speaking today, to help us understand what are the best practices in any given area, and to write, again, that step-by-step guidance. So we have academics, policy folks, we have our green teams and our municipal staff on the task forces that create the actions, because we don't want to do anything that the municipal staff is saying, it doesn't work for us, or here's how we do it in our municipality. So I've selected some of our actions that cover the realm of things, and you can see that there's points associated with all of those. I'm going to dive into several of them just to give you a sense of how they work. First of all, on the operations and management side, the municipal fleet, and I was talking over break with Bill, that's a really important area to look into for electrification. The first step is to understand your fleet and how it's being used. What vehicles are on your fleet? Is there a better way to sort of right-size that fleet? Are there certain vehicle duty uses that could actually switch over more easily to electric? I have here a police vehicle in the image. That seems to hit people as more unusual, but we've got police departments around the country going with electric. Your code vehicles are a good choice, and we don't have a vehicle or a fleet action in the school program, but certainly electric school buses are something that might be to consider. So the fleet inventory action helps you look at your fleet, look at how the vehicles are used, and decide where you can switch out and where you can start adding the electric vehicles. And again, I mentioned the municipal duty fleets. The public EV charging infrastructure action, we've already heard a lot about that today. I will point out, someone highly emphasized in their talk earlier that having it on a public directory is so very important. So our action actually requires that if the municipality puts in a public EV charging station, that it's listed publicly so people can find it. It's a great opportunity for partnerships with other entities in the municipality. The only thing we require is that the municipality took a leading role in pushing that forward. And making your town EV friendly. Again, our planners, we've been in discussion with a lot of planners around the state in terms of how to get your parking ordinances or any of your parking regulations such that there's absolutely no problem in putting in an EV charging station. In fact, in some cases you could take, and I'm not a planner so I don't know the lingo that well, but very often a building will require X number of parking spaces. You as a municipality could actually say, but if it's an EV charging spot, we're going to count that as 2 parking spaces. That's an incentive to put in that charging infrastructure. We do require that the local first responders are trained in responding to vehicle accidents that include alternative fuel vehicles. And then we have a number of outreach activities which are spot on with all the things that we've heard today. So we really do appreciate the folks who helped us write the action in the first place. But pre-wiring for electric vehicle charging. When you're building or renovating a new multi-story building or a new parking garage, you want to go ahead and put that wiring in. It saves so much money instead of going back and retrofitting it to tear up the pavement, put in any of the infrastructure needed. Awareness event, we have there the Drive Electric Week. That was in Montclair, I believe. So, all kinds of activities such as that. And these are all choices then. You don't have to do all of these activities. But they go right to the points that have been made today about workplace charging, about multi-unit dwelling charging. Do that outreach. Get those folks on board. Help educate them. Make them understand that this is basically the future and why not get on board real quickly. I do like to take a moment to point out the grant that was mentioned a couple of times today. It pays to plug in. The grant is still accepting applications, and a lot of our municipalities were funded in the first round. As I understand it, that grant right now is out of money, but the applications are still being accepted, first come, first serve when money does come out. But again, that's a great opportunity. The last couple of slides are different kinds of outreach activities that municipalities can do. Some of you may have heard of solar or solarized types of campaigns where a solar installer will provide a discount for 6 months, and if more people sign up and get solar on their home, the price will actually go down. You can do the very same thing with EVs. You work with your local auto dealer. Both of you together do the outreach. The auto dealer can say, look, I'll cut that price for 6 months. And the more people who come in, I might cut the price even farther. The outcomes of these programs have been almost unbelievable. 300% increase in vehicle adoption out in Colorado. The most interesting thing to me about this story is that with that many people buying electric vehicles during this promotion event, people on city council were buying it, municipal staff were buying them, and you suddenly got everyone in town saying, all right, guys, we need more public EV charging stations. We need to push this forward across the community. So very effective kind of outreach program, includes a lot of education. And then the last example I'll give, and we know Woodbridge is actually moving into this, the EV car sharing type of program. Several speakers have mentioned the importance of getting folks to experience an EV. What better way than to have EVs, kind of like a zip car, but EV car sharing. EV car sharing can actually serve low and moderate income communities who are those people maybe less likely at this time to be able to purchase an electric vehicle, but who are really dependent and need maybe that last mile or other uses that they can have, go to a job interview, go to doctor's appointments, they don't have a vehicle. This could be an excellent opportunity to kind of bridge that gap. So there's a lot of different ways to do car sharing. Some of the research suggests that introducing car sharing reduces the vehicle miles traveled and almost replaces, I think it says there, between 9 and 13 vehicles. So lots of things to think about. And again, our program mainly gives municipalities and schools the guidance and the tools to kind of get involved and do some work on this. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, Nancy, thank you very much. And we have one more presenter here, and then we'll open up the floor once again for Q&A before we wrap it up for today. Our final speaker, a licensed professional planner, both as a consultant and an administrator, and for the past 8 years, serving as the Director of Planning and Community Development in Montclair Township. We heard some talk about Montclair there just a second ago. All the cool spots downtown will be EV vehicles only soon. Yeah, I don't know, maybe we'll get there, right? Great restaurants, by the way, downtown. Please say hello to Janice Talley.
Thank you, and good afternoon. This is an exciting time to be part of transportation planning in anywhere in the United States because there's so much change happening from electric vehicles, car sharing, Uber. It is really changing the dynamics of parking and transportation in our municipalities, and planning for it, I think, is a bit of a challenge. So Montclair has been very involved in Sustainable Jersey. In fact, that's how we got started with our EV program. Probably back in 2006 or 2007, we did work. We were designated as a Sustainable Jersey community, and part of that was getting in our first EV stations in our public parking lots. So we've had it for a while. At least we've started the initiative for a while, and part of that was some of the incentives from Sustainable Jersey, which has been a great program. I'm going to fly through some of these slides because I think you know what a battery electric vehicle is compared to the plug-in hybrids. You've heard about it all morning. Here are some numbers. Right now we have 139 plug-in electric vehicles in Montclair. These are registered so we can track them. In the last year, since we started this study, we've seen 53 new vehicles added. That's a pretty big increase, 86%. Again, we're starting really small, so that's why 86% is such a big increase. But it is growing as the vehicles become more affordable and as their range of distance per charge increases. It's becoming a more appropriate mode of choice for a lot of people. And in Montclair, we're seeing a strong demand. So by 2030, and this is the numbers that were in our electric vehicle readiness plan that we worked with the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority and others in developing. By 2030, we're projected to have between 875 and 2,500 PEVs. At the rate of growth that we're expecting, I think it's going to be on the higher end if we've seen an 86% increase in just 1 year. Forecasts do predict that plug-in electric vehicles will make up to 6 to 17% of our fleet by 2030. We've already talked about the barriers, the costs, and the distance. And I think you've also heard about the different kinds of charging stations. This has been an education for me. Level 1 are the ones that you find in residences. Level 2 are slightly faster charging stations. Those are the ones that we generally provide in our municipal parking lots and in many of our commercial establishments. The really good ones are the DC fast, and I think some of my information here might even be dated because I think they're becoming even faster. But those are the fast chargers that right now are oriented to certain types of vehicles, such as the Tesla DC fast charger. BMW has their own style. So this is just some background information in terms of preparing our readiness plan. So right now we have 12 level 2 charging stations. 6 of those are in public parking lots owned by Montclair, some of which contain garages. We've actually put them in our parking garages as well as our surface lots. And 3 are on private property. We have a couple of commercial property owners and developers who are very dedicated to electric vehicles and have put them in one on their own We didn't require any type of incentive. This one particular property owner put in the DC fast charging station because he's dedicated to EVs. We didn't require any type of site plan approval to convert a parking space to an EV charging station. We just basically let him go in and get his building permit. The other two projects, private property projects, it was done as part of site plan approval. One, again, we didn't require it. It was a conversion of a church to an office building. They were going for LEED certification and wanted to have the EV charging stations, and we welcomed it. In recent years, since I've been in Montclair, we've been actually requiring it, making it a requirement in our redevelopment plans, and we've been actually very successful in getting them installed in parking decks for multifamily development. We've got one where there's two stations right now. We have a couple of projects that are under construction, and their approvals included fast charging stations. So things are changing, and I think we're trying to position ourselves to provide the infrastructure in the future. We have one in multifamily, a multifamily project. We have two that are coming in for mixed-use projects so that these EV charging stations are available for residents and tenants. And we also have one that's coming in that's associated with our hospital. The hospital right now doesn't have one. So there's a lot that's going on in terms of providing for electric vehicle charging stations. But going back to our readiness analysis, we looked at different sectors. I should say our consultants looked at different sectors. One was residential demand, and that's pretty easy. The residential demand, at least for single-family homes and two-family homes, is easy to accommodate because they can put in their own plug-ins at their home, or they can even plug right into an existing outlet. The issue for us is multifamily. About 50% of Montclair's housing stock is multifamily dwellings, and many of these dwellings were built in the 1950s, the 1940s. They're older. Quite a few of them don't have any parking. So the ones that don't have any parking, what we found is those residents who do want to charge their vehicles, they use our public parking lots. They can park their cars overnight in our parking lots and charge their vehicles overnight if it's in close proximity to where they live. And we do try to provide a variety of parking options throughout the town, so people who don't have parking lots on site can use our lots. And that's been pretty successful. The issue with the residential is landlords that do have parking, we haven't seen them convert, or I haven't been aware of them providing for electric charging stations, either the level 1 or the level 2. So that's something to be seen, because it's done privately. It's not really done through my office. So we'll see what the demand is for upgrading the plug-in vehicle connections on those properties. But this map here does show you where the demand is, and the bright orange area is where there's the high demand. We do have quite a few of those multifamily apartments in those locations. Well, here we go. This is multifamily. We have I guess the first one was single family. This is multifamily. You see where the orange is, where we have the higher demand. We looked at workplace charging demand. This goes back to the hospital. They were expanding. They're putting a 45,000 square foot medical office building. We did a redevelopment plan and said we really wanted to have electric vehicle charging as part of that, and they said fine. It was really part of their long-range plan and part of their mission for healthier living. We have quite a few of the charging areas along Bloomfield Avenue, which is our central business district and commercial corridor. Those are shown in green. Some of those are privately owned. Some of those are on our own lots and in our decks. The one thing I haven't heard back from is Montclair State University. I'm not aware of them having any plug-in electric vehicle charging stations. If they do, they don't have it on any mapping system. So that's one area that we've identified as a potential demand for additional charging stations. And then the last thing that we looked at was public charging demand. Again, because there's such a mix of buildings in age and style, and we do have a lot of parking facilities throughout the township, we found that providing them in our lots works. The issue is during the day, they're not quite so utilized. I find that they're a lot more utilized overnight, where people park there to charge overnight because they don't have the capacity within their multifamily apartment. It's interesting to note that we are also building parking decks. We have one parking deck, public parking deck that's under construction right outside of our downtown. And we've designed that not only to include 2 electric vehicle charging stations right now, but it's also going to be wired so it can be expanded in the future as demand increases. At the same time, we have a redevelopment project where they're providing 2 public electric vehicle charging areas within that. And again, we've told them that we wanted to have it wired so it can accommodate future demand, and there's been no issues. I think from my perspective, the development community is open to this and sees it as an attraction to their project, and I've not met any resistance. Even projects that, because we don't require this in our zoning, we don't have a requirement for electric vehicle charging stations. We only require it in our redevelopment plans. But outside of our redevelopment plans, I've had a couple of applicants come in for multifamily projects or mixed-use projects, and I've asked, can you put in a plug-in vehicle, a DC fast charging plug-in vehicle charging station? And they've embraced it. There's been no resistance. So I think it's been pretty successful, and it will be successful moving into the future. The issue is educating the owners of the older properties where there's hopefully an increasing demand and the need to add this component to their existing facilities. So that's essential. One of the things that we're looking forward to is, and our challenges as we complete and implement our readiness plan, is to amend the zoning ordinance. We will do that in the future to require these facilities. But again, have not seen an issue in asking for it right now, so I don't see a problem with that moving forward. And this just summarizes many of the funding sources, I believe, that Nancy talked about, which we're looking to fund the new charging stations on our municipal parking lots. And that's it.
All right, Janice, thank you. And once again, please thank Jennifer, Marta, Nancy, and Janice one more time. Thank you. All right, we'll now open it up to our final Q&A session of the afternoon.
Janice, on the municipal lots in Montclair, what network are you using, and are you charging? The public can utilize the charging stations in your lots?
The original ones that we put in, you can charge for free because they're old. In fact, we need to replace those. On our newer ones, we are charging. And I had some initial data about that, but I didn't bring it with me. It's interesting to note the ones that are being installed in the parking lots for our new development, they don't charge. They call it a juice bar. They don't charge. I think they provide it as an amenity to the people who park there. So I was trying to find information on the use of our charging facilities in the private lots, and I couldn't get it.
A question for Marta. Can you tell us more about the EV car sharing?
Well, we're just about ready to launch the program, which will be the first for us. And what we did is we went out to bid. We had to, in order to locate appropriately an entity to work with, and it will be a private entity that we're working with to locate in our township in locations that work for them. So we're working to help them find locations that from their business model and their practice elsewhere they know works, And some of those locations will also be township. It'll be on township property, but not exclusively on township property. It is literally a car share service program that's going to be run by the entity. We're helping them locate and bringing that amenity to the town.
Jennifer or Nancy, in either the JTPA guidebook or Sustainable New Jersey, is there an actual model ordinance for zoning or site plan changes right now in place? I've seen the Sustainable New Jersey, there's a 700-page guidebook, and I haven't read your guidebook yet, but is there an actual model ordinance available anywhere that municipalities could follow as a starting point?
The question is, did we include a model ordinance in our guidebook that municipalities could kind of flip to that page?
Or are you aware of one
Or
anywhere?
we're aware of one. We, at the beginning of the study, the project team did a literature review, took a look at everything that was out there on the topic across the country, not just what was in New Jersey, a lot of that material coming out of California. And that we've pointed to those resources. And if you're having any trouble locating it, I can point to the information in the literature.
Just real quick on that, and I'm also on NJTPA, I believe there's the ordinance from Montclair's redevelopment plan is in the appendix of your readiness plan. So that might guide you, okay? Right? We have that in the appendix.
Yeah, we have regulations in our redevelopment plan. I think it's in there.
And I'll just speak from Sustainable Jersey side. We did the best research we could and put into the guidebook the best guidance we could. I don't think there's a full-scale ordinance in there, but as they come through this process, we'll certainly update that guidance and include links to, for example, Montclair's ordinance. So we hope to have that for you.
Last question, Bill.
I have the privilege of the final question. I think one of the things we heard today from the entrepreneur is the cost savings involved in electric vehicles. We all know about the environmental abilities. I think municipalities and subregions could also get a cost-sharing advice about changing their fleet and saving money over the long run.
Right.
It really could do when the major issue in New Jersey, of course, is property taxes. Anything we can do to save government money is something people should look at. And I'm hoping the guidebooks and municipal leaders and the subregions understand the financial implications of electric vehicles.
Thank you so much, of course, to our panelists. We want to thank all of our attendees as well. We'll do this again in 18 months or fewer, right, Bill? Sometime less than that, I hope so. But again, kmm.org, stay on top of it. There's so many things that are going on, so many things that are changing. And Cape Middlesex Moving's website, kmm.org, is a great resource. Thanks, everybody, for coming today. Have a terrific afternoon, and we'll see you all again very, very soon. And thank you so much.